Welcome to our free talk this evening. Thank you all for coming. It's a big one. Clearly an interesting topic. If I get going, just a show of hands, who's here for the first time at one of my talks? Oh wow, quite a lot. Okay. So I don't normally start my talks like this, but I'd like to start by apologizing to you for giving this talk. It's my least favorite topic, and a topic I've been avoiding for the last 7 or 8 years. But with what's going on in the banting world and people just getting really sick, it's just, okay, fine. We'll talk. Secondly, I'd like to apologize as a representative of humanity to the animals on the planet and the atrocities that occur on a daily basis to all of them. I think it's beyond shocking. And I apologize to you because I will be sharing some of what happens to those animals to you tonight. Luckily not a video format, I'll just read a few things. But I'll give you some links and you're welcome to check it out. It's all available online. It's free out there, it's just no one checks. I tried to watch one of the movies, I managed 1 minute and 30 seconds and I was just finished, couldn't do it. So, a meat minute. So, to begin with, I have to start at the beginning, which is that our food programming comes from our parents and our society. And in South Africa, more than any other place in the world, I think the braai culture is deeply entrenched through our conditioning. And so I also honor you for bringing it, because it's very brave to be coming to a talk on a topic that is so against the culture. It really is. So well done for that. I hope no one came thinking I was going to be pro. Have my chuffy. Look at him. He's so apt. So let's start with the history lesson. Because for me, a lot of what's going on in the nutritional world is people cherry-picking information, as always happens. Diet world is let's cherry-pick macronutrient consumption. So it's we're either going to eat fats or protein or carbs or cut one out or have minimal of the other. And the problem with this is that people often don't understand what the macronutrient is to begin with. What is protein, what is fat, what is sugar? So I'm going to spend a bit of time on that, just clarifying what they are and where you get them from. Because everyone goes, protein, meat. But that's not the case. It's just protein is a type of molecule found in plants and vegetables and animals. It's everywhere. So I'll get into that first, and then we'll get into some factory farming horror stuff, and then I'll get into some great alternatives, much better than the original dodgy stuff. And then we'll finish off with some recipes. I've got some recipes that you guys can have too, and then we'll do our prize giveaway. So a bit of a history lesson. You guys can read that. Yeah, 1914. Osborne and Mendel experimented with rats. Rats have a hard time, eh? So what they did is with rats. That's a weird typo. So they gave them protein, and they grew faster when they gave them animal foods than when they gave them plant food protein. Amazing that. So they went, therefore animal protein is better. They classed it as A protein, and they classed plant protein as B protein. And since then, 100 years ago, this is still the stigma attached to the difference between plant and animal protein. Even though shortly after, it was discovered that plant foods do contain all essential amino acids, certain plant foods. So they do contain the full spectrum of what you need from protein. They also found that rats have different requirements for protein than humans do. So this is amazing. If it works for a rat, it must work for a person. And as crazy as it may seem that this is the basis of all current nutritional perspective on protein, it still is. I kid you not. 100 years on, they haven't changed the textbooks. 1956, egg, dairy, meat industries banded together, convincing the US government to officially endorse the birth of the fattest food lie of them all, which is called the 4 food groups: meat, dairy products, refined grains, fruit and vegetables. The 4 food groups. Who's heard of the 4 food groups? It's still taught today. It's insane. Now, as someone who studied nutrition for a long time, the fact that a food type ends up in food grouping is clearly industry misaligned, or positively aligned. And, you know, some of you have been to my talks, you kind of understand a little bit about, you know, how the world works with the food industry and policy and governments and all that kind of stuff. If you don't know, I'll give you a quick summary. You've got big agribusiness and you've got big medicine. And they pay for the government to be doing what they're doing. Whether it's South African government or American government, South Africa takes its policy from the States. So they basically create policy for governments. They spend lots of money on, you know, keeping politicians in their jobs. So that policy is then fed down through to farming or through to the medical industry or through to health policies, that kind of stuff. But the originator of the policy was the corporation itself. Now, some of you are already going, hang on a moment, how can that be ethical? I mean, you know, they clearly want to sell more products, so they're clearly going to make stories that supports them selling more product. And as it turns out, that's exactly what happens in the world. So in this exercise, you can clearly see that. Putting dairy and meat as a food group. It's mad, totally mad. What else have we got? 1914, back again. So back to Osborne and Mendel. That's the one. The World Health Organization. Oh no, that's it. They grew faster from the animal protein, but they also died quicker of chronic degenerative diseases. So it's, but their systems couldn't handle the fast growth, so they died quicker. You know, that little part of the story never came out. Today, even the World Health Organization and many experts tell us that we only need 4.5% protein in terms of calorific quantity in our diets, and that we can get all that protein from plant sources. So the official story has actually already changed, but the crazy story we get from mainstream media and all those other weird places is still singing from the old story, which has already been disproven. So everyone has this idea around protein, around meat, and about dairy, when even the guys on the top who know have already disproved this a long time ago. So let's get into the nutritional pyramid. These are the three macronutrients. There's actually four. The fourth is oxygen. Protein, carbs, fats. Protein was discovered first. It was the first nutrient. That's why I got this big name of protein. It means primary importance, because they found it out. They went, this is the stuff in food that we need. And then they discovered carbs. And they went, oh, but carbs are also important. And then, but we've given away the name protein. Oh, okay, we'll call it something else. This is how it happened. And this is why protein is given this. I mean, at 4.5% in your diet, does it really sound like it's the most important thing in our diets? Clearly not. So I'm going to do a quick rundown of what carbs are, what protein is, and what fats are. Carbs are an essential energy source for the body. There are all sorts of different carbohydrates. Long-chain polysaccharides, short-chain sugars, you know, stuff that's easy to digest, stuff that's hard to digest, stuff that breaks down to sugar quickly, stuff that takes a long time to break down. The basic story around sugar or carbs and health is that the more refined and the more processed it is, the more dangerous it is for you. The more whole food it is, the more natural it is, the safer it is for you. So the question you have to ask about food is, how big is the factory between you and your meal? So when you eat something, you have to go, what process has this gone through to get to me? So in the case of refined white sugar, you know, major processing to get to you. So you end up with a food that's calorie dense, but nutrient deficient. That's why they call it an empty calorie food. And it's got a huge burden. What places a large burden on the body is resources to break it down, because it doesn't come with all the minerals and the fiber and the vitamins that the body needs to break it down properly. So if you ate sugar cane in the field, is that healthy for you?
Yeah.
It's amazing for you. That is wheatgrass, but it's sweet. How many of you had the wheatgrass this morning? I had a couple. So this is the thing, you know, the original food is amazing. It's the processing and the final product that's a problem. And most of consumers today are eating highly processed food as the end product and don't question the process that it took to get there. So you basically want to go back towards whole fruits, vegetables, whole grains, things that are as close to the way nature provides them as possible. Things that are not broken down, have other elements stripped out, you know, like white flour. It's very much a pale resemblance to its original whole grain form. So you're always safer with the whole grain. Saying that, what I like about what the Banting diet has done is it's made people aware of the fact that sugar is poison. Whereas for many years people weren't aware of that. And sugar is poison. It's been known for over 100 years that sugar is a poison. It actually affects your body like any other poison would. It just does it slowly over a long period of time. But if you went on a pure, refined sugar diet, you wouldn't last a month. You would start having organ failure. It's that toxic. Most people don't realize. So it's great that people are going, oh my gosh, I've got to get off sugar. And the problem, of course, is that they're throwing it all out. They're going, I've got to get off everything. That's even carbohydrate related. Whereas when carbs are a fundamental nutrient for us, our cells turn sugar or carbs into glycogen. It is our fuel. If you have 0 carbs in your diet, you're going to be asleep a lot. You know? I mean, it's possible to train yourself to eat 0 carbs, but it's not necessarily the cleverest thing to do, and it's certainly not necessary. As long as you're eating whole food carbs that digest slowly in the system. Moving along. Okay. I mean, sugar's a big topic, we can carry on for ages, but I want to focus more on protein tonight. So, protein. Protein is primarily used by your body to build and repair tissue. It does have many other functions. Brain chemicals, enzyme production, many other things, primarily building and repairing. What I found curious is that babies that obviously drink human breast milk, the milk only has 1 to 3% protein in it. So it's actually very low. I was thinking, I thought it would be at least 30%. 1 to 3% is what the baby requires to kickstart probably one of the biggest growth curves of its life. So I found that quite interesting. So what are adult requirements? Because there's all these numbers around of how much protein we actually need. So I looked into the clinical research studies and I found that the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition actually published one in the 80s which clearly showed the amount of protein minimum requirements for humans. And it was between 12 and 20 grams a day, depending on your level of activity. Now that's a lot lower from the normal RDAs you find today, which says anything from 60 to 200 grams a day. So I was like, well, why is it so much more? You know, if you only need up to 20 grams, why is it 60? And it wasn't until I read the China study by Dr. Colin Campbell that I learned why. Because he was on the original boards in America deciding what the RDAs and RDIs were in the 70s and 80s. And he was the one on the board who saw how industry was coming and going, okay, protein 20%, that's fine, but just in case, let's make it 40. Just in case, let's make it 60. And big funding to all of the universities that worked with them on this. And so it's a complete sham. It really is just industry-sponsored numbers. And obviously they went, I mean, how much harm could it do? I mean, up the protein to 60 grams, to 100 grams, at least people are safe. But in reading the China study, you quickly learn that more animal protein is not safe. It's actually dangerous and it's cancer-forming, cancer-feeding. So the more animal protein you consume, the more detrimental it is on your health. Not the case with plant protein, interestingly enough. And I highly recommend reading the book. It's quite a big one. I actually didn't read the book. I listened to the audio book. That's how I take it in, just earphones while I'm driving. So I highly recommend that book. So we have a situation. Here's the study. If anyone wants it, I can email it to them. I've got the PDF. This is the requirements. It tells you the calories, it tells the protein amounts. You can see, it ranges from around 12 up to 29 if you're very active and have a high calorie intake. But those numbers are way lower than the 60 to 200 that's recommended today. So my question is always, why have more when you don't need more? Because the question I get a lot as a vegetarian and vegan is, can you get enough protein? And I'm going to, through tonight's talk, show you that you can absolutely get enough, even if you're a vegan. So quality versus quantity. So the thing I liked about the Banting approach is the making people aware of sugar. What I dislike about the Banting approach is that they completely ignore quality. Almost entirely forgotten. I mean, recently I had a good friend of mine interview Spear, because they do, Angus does a whole bunch of organic meats and things, chickens and stuff. And she said, wow, you must be doing really well financially with all this Banting stuff happening. And his response was, it's made no difference to my sales whatsoever. So what does that mean? Because people are now eating more meat than ever before, but they're not buying organic free-range meat. They're just going to Checkers and getting whatever's available there. So there's zero consciousness about quality, and quality is everything with animal food, because animals are higher on the food chain than plants. They live longer, they're bigger, they concentrate toxicity far more than plants do. So if you want to eat organic, animal food is where you begin with, because that's where you get most of your poisons, and I'm going to give you some statistics on that just now. So the other question then is, what about complete protein? Am I getting all my essential amino acids? There are 9 of them, 8, 9. And again, it has now been found that there are a number of plant foods that do contain all essentials. But not only that, your body pools amino acids. So whatever you eat throughout the day, if breakfast was missing 2 amino acids, you might get them from lunch. And then it pools it, and you can make tissue with it. You don't have to have complete protein in every meal. That's a complete fallacy. You know? So don't worry about that one either. I mean, luckily we have technology so you can eat complete protein every meal if you want to, because it's available today. But it's not necessary. Cows, what do cows eat? Cows eat grass. Where are they getting their complete protein from? Grass. What about giraffes? What about rhinos? What about hippos? What about elephants? Where are these guys getting their complete protein from? They're not small animals. Now I understand some of them have 3 stomachs, some of them chew all day. You know, I get all of that. We have an Oscar juicer. It's like a 3-stomach machine. You get the fiber on the one side, you get the juice on the other side. It's like having a cow for yourself. It really is. You know? So we have the technology. We use our brains, and we shortcut it, which is available. Grass is a complete protein. It's what feeds most land animals. When I'm on my farm, I go and I pick a kuyu and buffalo lawn grass, and I juice it every day. And drink 100 mils of it every day. Amazing stuff. You want to feel what high really feels like? That's the grass you should be on. Oh yes. Kid you not. So as it turns out, chlorophyll-rich foods are between 2 and 30% protein concentration. So when people ask me where do I get my protein from, the first thing I say is greens. And they're like, huh? I thought you were going to say beans. And I'm like, no, beans make me fart. I don't really like beans. But lettuce and kale and spinach, I mean, you don't normally think of them as protein-rich foods, but that's the foundation of protein. And I'll show you that a little bit later. That's where you get your protein from. On a day-to-day basis, if you're juicing greens and you're eating salads, you can fulfill all your daily requirements on that. Now, granted, most people don't eat any greens, so it comes as a bit of a stretch for most people, but it is certainly possible, and greens are the food that is most ignored in the Western diet. It's the food it's like the elephant in the room no one sees. Why is everyone sick? What should we eat? You go outside and you go, what color is nature? And we think like, what should we eat? Deep fried potato chips. Hang on a moment, nature makes this really easy. What color is everything outside? Green. Okay, we're not anymore after the fire, but it's really simple. Like you walk outside, everything is green. It's like if you were dropped here from a spaceship and you have to find out, it's like, there's a lot of green here. Probably should be eating some of that. And as it turns out, that's exactly what we should be eating and could be eating. Again, I go into greens in great detail on my alkalizing and greens talk. It's on YouTube, you can have a look. So there's greens, there's sprouts, there's veggies, there's fruits. They all contain some level of protein. So in a day, if you're having smoothies and juices and salads and you're snacking on stuff, you're getting good quality protein. Now for me, the most recent information around food and protein is that superfoods, one of the primary reasons that makes them super is that they have protein in them, lots of protein. So I'm going to show you slides of that right at the end of my talk. But superfoods are key for protein, especially if you do a lot of exercise, bodybuilding, fitness training, that kind of thing, or any degenerative diseases. Superfoods are really where it's at because up to 30 to 70% protein by weight. That's huge, massive. And then we get to fats. So I'm just going to whiz through fats. One of the things I also like about the Banting diet is that they recommend high fats. And that is actually great. The studies and the research around low-fat diets that came out in the early 80s and late 70s were very, very thin. There wasn't any substance to the research. So we've had 2 decades of this low-fat craze. And what's happened? Everyone's less fat, and there's more heart disease than ever before. So it's not the fats. And it certainly isn't the saturated fat, because saturated fat doesn't automatically cause heart disease, not at all. What they have found, though, is the higher the temperature that the fats are exposed to, the more risk there is of heart disease. Because cooked fats change structure to become trans fat. And that is what sticks as plates onto your arteries. So the cooked fats are the thing to watch out for. We have to have fat in our diet. I mean, it's an energy source. Our cell membranes are made out of it. There's certain vitamins you can only get from fats. So quality there is for me really about cold press is essential. And raw, don't cook your fats. If you cook your fats,
what temperature do they turn into trans fats?
it depends on the fats. So polyunsaturated fats are the most sensitive to heat. So that's your seed and nut oils. Monosaturated fats are less prone to things. It's like olive oil and some of the other things. And then obviously saturated fats are the most, they can handle heat the most. So that's your coconut oil and butter and that kind of stuff. And they're very heat resistant. But still, if you don't have to heat it, don't heat it. It's always going to be better raw. What I found amazing in doing this research is that the Inuits, also known as Eskimos, there was a guy by the name of Dr. Weston Price who wrote a book called Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. And this was in like 60s, 70s, 50s even. He was going around to all of these tribes on the planet and looking at their teeth and their jaw structure and their general health and going, what are they eating and how healthy are they? And he found that the Inuits were actually some of the healthiest tribal people that he had met, even more healthy than people living in tropical jungles. And you would think, they're like living with freezing cold conditions and living in igloos, what is going on? Well, they're also eating 80% fat in their diets. And almost all of that is saturated fat from whale blubber. You think, how could that be healthy? They had no dental cavities, perfect teeth structure, perfect bone health, no heart disease whatsoever. And what is going on? As soon as the Western diet came in, refined sugar and alcohol skyrocketed rates of diabetes, heart disease, all of it. So it's when you add refined carbohydrates with cooked oils, that's like tinderbox. Refined carbs and cooked oils. Those are the 2 most dangerous food types that you can take in. So what we have today is that a lot of people are deficient in omega-3s. So I'll just mention that up your intake of those, because they're the protective ones, anti-inflammatory ones. So seed oils like hemp seeds and chia seeds and flax seeds are all excellent sources of omega-3s. Obviously fish oil is also a source, but you've got to be careful because there's a lot of mercury, so you've got to make sure it's a mercury-free source that you're getting. Okay, so that's fats. Can I move along? Okay, there's a lot of information tonight, so I'm just trying to skim over it. This is being filmed, so if you miss anything, you can go online and you can watch it again for free. Just make sure it's filming. Yes. Make sure it's filming. Yes. Okay.